It is the 3rd of November 1942, and in a cramped laboratory beneath a Victorian building in WWII Garden City, a woman is tipping rust into a glass jar. Her name is recorded in a single declassified memo dated 1971 as E.M. Hadley, listed under her section as Technical Assistant Grade 2. What she is doing looks to any observer like nothing at all. The rust comes from an ordinary iron plate left outside in the Hertfordshire rain. It has been ground to a powder so fine it hangs in the air of the room like smoke. She seals the jar with a rubber stopper. She labels it. She places it on a shelf beside 14 identical jars. The room smells of iron and rain, and something faintly chemical underneath, the way old pennies smell when held too long in a warm palm. The jar weighs almost nothing. Its contents cost less than the label on its side. Outside the window, the November sky is the colour of old pewter, and somewhere in the North Atlantic, British merchant sailors are dying at a rate that cannot be sustained. What sits inside that jar is ferric oxide, iron rust, the thing every schoolboy is told ruins metal, the thing every navy spends its budget fighting against. In the next 14 months, deliberately introduced into the magnetic compass systems of German U-boats, it would contribute to navigation errors that sent submarines to their deaths without a single Allied torpedo being fired. The Kriegsmarine never fully understood what had happened to them. To understand why rust became a weapon, you must understand what was happening to Britain in the autumn of 1942. The numbers are not comfortable reading. Between January and November of that year, German U-boats sank 1,160 Allied vessels in the Atlantic. Over 6 million tons of shipping. The figures were so catastrophic that Winston Churchill later admitted, in private correspondence, that the Battle of the Atlantic was the one campaign that genuinely frightened him throughout the war. The U-boat was not simply dangerous, it was almost perfectly dangerous. A Type 7C submarine running on the surface could make 17 knots. Submerged, it was silent, near invisible, and could dive to 220 meters in under a minute when its captain ordered it. The Wolfpack tactics perfected by Admiral Karl Dönitz required precise coordination across hundreds of miles of open ocean. The U-boat's magnetic compass was the instrument that made this possible. Destroy a U-boat's ability to navigate accurately, and you did not merely inconvenience it. You killed it slowly and invisibly, and it never knew why. Bombing the shipyards had been tried. The submarine pens at Brest, Saint-Nazaire and Lorient were reinforced with concrete roofing 3.5 meters thick. RAF Bomber Command flew 3,000 sorties against these installations between 1941 and 1943. The pens remained functional throughout. The submarines kept coming. Mining the approaches was tried. The Germans swept them. Electronic jamming was tried. The U-boats adapted. Each Allied solution required resources, men, machines and time that Britain could not spare indefinitely. What was needed was something that got inside the problem at the level the Germans could not see. Something that did its damage before a single shot was fired, before a single sonar ping was sent. Something that made the submarine itself unreliable. No solution of that kind appeared to exist. The department responsible for finding one did not advertise its existence. Section 9 of MD1, the directorate operating from the Firs in WWII Garden City, under the technical direction of Major Millis Jeffress, had already produced some of the war's more unorthodox weapons. The sticky bomb, the limpet mine, the spigot mortar. Jeffress himself was a man who, by several accounts, preferred problems other engineers had declared impossible. He wore his uniform as though it had been issued to someone else. He drank tea constantly and rarely appeared in official photographs. What he produced, with a small team of scientists, engineers, and people like E.M. Hadley who were listed simply as assistants, had a habit of working. The compass problem was brought to the attention of the section in early 1942 through a combination of intelligence from SOE agents in occupied France and a captured U-boat technical manual retrieved from U-570, which had surrendered to a Hudson aircraft of Coastal Command in August 1941 and been boarded intact. The manual described in precise detail the compass system used across the standard U-boat fleet. It was a liquid compass, the needle suspended in a mixture of ethyl alcohol and distilled water to dampen oscillation. The needle itself was magnetized steel, sealed inside a glass bowl. The whole assembly was simple, robust, and, the team at WWII quickly noticed, vulnerable to one specific thing. Ferric oxide particles, fine enough to remain suspended in the compass liquid, rather than sinking to the bottom, would interact with the magnetic needle. Not immediately, not dramatically. Over time, and under the oscillation caused by depth changes, the particles would accumulate at the needle's poles. At sufficient concentration, they would resist the needle's rotation. The compass would still read. It would read confidently, as all good instruments do. It would simply be reading the wrong direction. The first test went badly. The initial oxide was too coarse. The particles settled out of suspension within 40 minutes, long before reaching a level of concentration sufficient to affect the needle. The second formulation used a grinding process borrowed from paint manufacture, a technique Hadley herself refined over 6 weeks of iterative testing that produced particles measuring between 0.5 and 2 microns. These remained suspended almost indefinitely. The third test ran for 11 days in a sealed test compass. On the 11th day, the needle, placed in a known magnetic field, indicated 14 degrees east of north. The correct reading was north. The compass appeared perfect. An experienced navigator consulting it would have had no reason for suspicion. He would simply have sailed 14 degrees in the wrong direction and believed completely in what his instrument was telling him. The day the test concluded, Jeffress apparently said nothing. He poured himself tea. He wrote a 3-line memo. The project moved to operational phase. If this story is new to you, a quick subscribe means you will never miss another one like it. Getting the oxide into German submarines required the kind of work that left almost no paper trail by design. The SOE circuits operating across occupied Europe, Prosper in northern France, Scientist along the Atlantic coast, Stockbroker in the west, maintained contact with French dock workers, port labourers and maintenance personnel who moved through the U-boat facilities at Brest, Lorient and Bordeaux. Some of these contacts were members of the French resistance networks coordinated by the Confrérie Notre Dame and later by Alliance. Most are still unnamed in any public document. Declassified files from 1971 indicate that the oxide was transported in sealed tins disguised as machine lubricant additives, a product which already existed in legitimate form and moved through port supply chains without inspection. The concentration required was small. A quantity of oxide occupying a space no larger than a matchbox, introduced into the compass compensating fluid during routine maintenance, was sufficient. Surviving records suggest the method was used successfully at least 8 times between March and October 1943. The exact number remains genuinely unknown. Records relating to individual operations were deliberately destroyed following the standard MD1 protocol for deniable materials. What the German records do show is harder to dismiss. U-boat war diary entries from 1943, captured and analysed at the end of the war, contain repeated references to compass anomalies that were attributed to manufacturing defects, magnetic interference from cargo, or errors in the charts. A Feldwebel's diary recovered from a U-boat forced to surface in the Bay of Biscay in September 1943 describes 3 separate occasions on which the boat's position, as calculated by the navigator, proved irreconcilable with observed star sites. The crew understood that something was wrong with the compass. They did not understand what. One agent, whose identity remains protected by a D notice that as of 2024 has not been lifted, described in a post-war debrief the experience of working in the Lorient facility. The detail that appears in the debrief, and which has never been repeated in any published history, is this. He was so frightened during the insertion of the oxide that he dropped the tin and had to collect the powder from the floor of the maintenance bay on his hands and knees in near darkness, while a German rating smoked a cigarette less than 4 meters away on the other side of a bulkhead. He recovered it. He completed the task. He walked out through the gate with his papers in order. He did not sleep for 2 nights afterward. The British oxide program had no direct American equivalent in the Atlantic theatre. The OSS, operating largely in the Mediterranean and later in the Pacific, developed separate compass contamination techniques for use against Japanese shipping. But the formulation differed significantly. The American variant used a colloidal suspension of magnetite rather than ferric oxide, which produced faster initial effects but was detectably discoloring to the compass fluid after approximately 3 weeks. The British formulation left the fluid visually indistinguishable from uncontaminated stock. The German response, when it came, focused entirely on the wrong problem. From mid-1943, Kriegsmarine technical orders required U-boat commanders to cross-check magnetic compass readings against gyro compass headings at regular intervals. This was a sensible precaution against magnetic interference from cargo or hull damage. It was not a defense against the specific mechanism of the oxide contamination, because the oxide affected the magnetic compass only, leaving the gyro compass entirely correct. The cross-checking procedure would therefore have revealed a discrepancy immediately. But that discrepancy, in the absence of any understanding of the oxide's existence, was invariably attributed to magnetic anomaly or compass damage, not to contamination. The German technical teams replaced compasses that showed discrepancies. Replacement compasses, if processed through the same maintenance facilities, received the same treatment. No Soviet adoption of the technique is recorded in any declassified material available as of 2024. Whether this reflects an absence of the capability or simply an absence of the record is a question the available archives cannot answer. The documented impact of compass-based navigation errors on U-boat losses is, by necessity, approximate. The Kriegsmarine's own records, held at the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg, attribute 11 submarine losses in the Bay of Biscay between January and December 1943 to causes listed as unknown or navigation error. This does not mean all 11 were victims of the oxide program. It means that navigation failure was a recognized category of loss, and that the category was large enough to require its own designation. What the psychological impact looked like inside the U-boat service can be read in the letters of men who survived. A sense that the ocean itself had become unreliable, that instruments could not be trusted, that the certainty which had made the wolf pack so effective, the certainty of position, of coordination, of knowing exactly where you were in 3 million square miles of featureless water, had become uncertain in ways that no training addressed. The physical items related to this program are not prominently displayed. The Imperial War Museum London holds several examples of MD1 sabotage materials, including items from the broader WWII research program, though specific oxide samples are not part of the public collection. The National Army Museum holds the Jeffries papers, though significant portions remain restricted. For the researcher willing to read between the administrative silences, the story is there. Modern naval counter-sabotage procedures for precision navigation instruments, including specific screening protocols for maintenance materials entering submarine facilities, owe a debt to lessons learned from exactly this category of threat. That debt is not often acknowledged by name. Return, then, to WWII Garden City. Return to the room that smells of iron and rain. Return to E.M. Hadley, Technical Assistant, Grade 2. tipping rust into a glass jar on a November afternoon, while the Atlantic War consumed its dead by the thousand. She seals the jar. She places it on the shelf. She does not know, and cannot know, which U-boat will be navigating by a compass filled with her powder. She does not know the name of the man who will introduce it into the maintenance fluid, or the name of the sailor who will consult the compass and believe what it tells him, or the name of the officer who will mark the position on the chart and give the order to dive. She knows none of these things. What she knows is the chemistry. She knows that ferric oxide particles measuring less than 2 microns will remain suspended in an ethyl alcohol solution almost indefinitely. She knows that at the needle's poles, the accumulation will build over days, imperceptibly, invisibly, the way rust itself builds on iron left in rain. She knows that when the accumulation reaches the threshold, the needle will resist rotation, that it will settle at an angle that feels true and reads false. She knows this because she spent 6 weeks of nights in this room finding it out. The jar goes on the shelf. The label says nothing that would mean anything to anyone outside the room. The November sky outside the window is still the color of old pewter. The rain, which has not stopped for 3 days, continues to fall on the iron plate in the courtyard below, making more rust, making more of what she needs. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, a U-boat surfaces to take a star sight. The navigator consults his compass. He plots his position. He has no reason to question the instrument. It has always been reliable. It is reliable now. It tells him exactly where he is. He is wrong by 14 degrees. He does not know this. He will not know this. He gives the order to dive, not a bomb, not a torpedo, not a minefield. A jar of rust from a Hertfordshire courtyard, ground fine enough to hang in air, found its way into the needle that told him where he was going. The compass read true. The war did not.